What's up, folks? Welcome back to the show. First off, happy Thanksgiving. Hope your holiday has been well so far. And if you're catching it after the Thanksgiving holiday, hope you had a wonderful holiday, better than you deserve. You got plenty to eat. You got to spend some time with your family, friends, loved ones, all that good stuff. Up next on the show, we have three wonderful ladies, Holly, Amy, and Kristen from the hit podcast, Just Think. These women, they're pretty incredible. They're very strong women, very outspoken women. If you're a strategies and tactics only listener to our show, this might not be the show for you. However, I encourage you to listen because you never know what somebody may say that might resonate with you and something that you can take on and move forward with. Anyway, in our conversation, we talk about their political views, their stances on education system, healthcare system, politics, of course, all kinds of other good things. We had a great time. We're very grateful for them. Be sure to catch their stuff on iTunes, Spotify, Google, all the normal podcast platforms. You can find them there. Also, if you haven't already, switch over to Amazon Smile. Super simple process, very easy. Type in Smile in the search bar on Amazon. It'll be one of the selections. Click on it. Go through that little questionnaire real quick. At the very bottom where it asks you which charitable fund you would like to donate to, that's where you put in Professional Firefighters of North Carolina Charitable Fund. Doesn't cost you anything extra. It just takes a percentage from your purchases, your normal purchases on Amazon, and donates it to that charity. It's wonderful, super simple, super easy. Again, happy holidays to everybody. Hope your Thanksgiving was great. Thank you so much for your support. God bless.
It's like Joe Rogan's stuff.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, it kind of is, especially with the alcohol.
That's what I'm saying.
This is a first for us.
The microphones, if you will, get them like a fist from your face, and you'll be squared away.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll follow you.
You sure? Because I'm loud.
Yeah.
I'm like, let me.
I can fix that later.
Yeah.
Well, Kristen and I are way louder than Amy, so
We don't need a third person to be competing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just like, I'll talk if y'all want to listen to me, you can, but I'm not gonna be screaming.
I don't try to
I
scream.
holler sometimes.
I watch Amy because when I can tell Amy's going to say something,
like-
I'm like, I pull back, like let Amy say
I
something.
like trying to raise my hand like I'm at school.
Yeah.
I got a question.
So when y'all started y'all show, y'all were all three in Wilmington together?
No.
So y'all have always been separate?
Well,
Yes.
Amy and I are here.
Yeah.
Right.
But Holly's
Holly,
in
yeah,
Raleigh.
that's right. She's gone to Raleigh. I forgot. I for some reason thought y'all were all three together at some point.
No,
Never have been.
Never have been.
How did that relationship happen then?
Yeah.
To
Our
begin with.
business.
Yeah,
It's a God thing.
it is.
I mean, truly.
It really was.
Yeah, we started, Holly, she was first. We have our business with Rodan and Fields Skincare. And
And hair care now.
hair care now. if you can tell. But when we were thinking about deciding to get into the business, we didn't know Holly at all, but we had a mutual friend. And the mutual friend put us on the phone with Holly because that was her mentor. Holly was her mentor, and Holly helped explain to us. We had no idea, no business experience, no clue. But it was like a three-way call with her. We're in Wilmington, she's in Raleigh, and she, was able to convince us skeptics to join
Right.
this business, and so that's how we met. And it's just wild that that phone call led to us being in business together, being successful with that together, and then now ultimately led us to our podcast. So
Yeah.
that's how we know each other.
Well, it really developed a friendship out of that, and that was so. Then you have the friendship, and then it was so interesting because the first time I ever talked to them, instantly liked them. There's just some people you meet, and you're like, we're meant to know each
It's
other.
like easy combo.
Conversation, and then I come to Wilmington to do some work with them, and instantly love them. And there were so many people in that room that night. I remember these two. It's just so interesting. And thinking they are such dynamic gals, like so authentic and so real. And listen, we were business associates. We didn't talk in politics.
No.
You
I
get to
hated
know,
politics.
and
we
I
didn't
think
pay attention to politics
Right.
until we
no,
did it.
their heads
Yeah.
were way in
Yeah,
the sand.
mine was,
Yeah.
It's all new for
that's
us.
why I live at the beach.
Right.
We're just close.
I was raised with an entrepreneurial father and grandfathers. And so we talked business and politics my whole life. And I hated politics. I hated partisan politics because I saw how it just became so tribal and it became so divisive and people fighting, kind of nitpicking almost sometimes. I'm like, if we all sat down and talked about what we agreed on, we would have a long list of things. Well, we used to would. I mean, I'm starting to wonder now,
Yeah.
would we?
Right.
I think most of us used to would say, I believe in the Constitution. I believe in the freedom of speech. I believe in the freedom of religion. I believe in bodily autonomy. Like we would have all collectively said that's part of being American. And so for years I used to think, well, if people could just sit down and start where we agree, the things you don't agree on, you could work through. So you fast forward to 2020, the pandemic's happening. Our businesses are, we have virtual businesses, but they were being impacted because we couldn't see each other. And we're on Zooms and we're just texting. We're texting and we're talking. And I didn't know at the time where they were politically, but we had gone through the 2016 election together. And so I remember having some conversations then about distrust of certain people. And I knew they probably would not be absolutely offended by some things I thought, know.
Like creep in there.
Yeah, sort of
right?
creep in there like, well, and so, we had conversations about Trump back in 2016. So, but a side note was we were raising kids all together. My kids were older. I'm further ahead in the parenting journey. My kids are,
Nice
6.
way to put that.
Right? Yeah, a little older. 16 and 23, right? So I had some experience with the medical profession and my children and started to talk about, the childhood visits, well visits, and what that really meant and what was really happening. And I was planting seeds in them for years, and they didn't realize I was planting seeds, but I was putting it out there. And they know me. I'm like, if I say something, I'm going to tell you why, right? I'm going to give you the receipt because I'm a fighter by nature, but I don't actually enjoy fighting just to fight. I want to fight because I'm going to prove to you
Right.
why I know that this is right. So I would give them evidence, and they started, their minds started turning. And so when you fast forward to 2020 and you're looking at lockdowns, our kids are not at school, and everything in these two, and I'm talking about Kristen and Amy, they were not engaged in anything political, but both of them said, something is wrong. Something is really, really wrong. This doesn't feel right. I'm getting angry. I'm feeling gaslighted. And so as we're on these group texts, we start realizing Kristen kind of was independent. Amy was raised on the left. I was raised on the right. We agreed on everything. And when you're, the world's trying to tell everybody that we're so divided, like ideologically or politically. Well, we weren't.
Right.
We respected each other. And you know what held us together is we said, bring me the proof. And if we could bring the evidence, then we're like, okay, then. So we thought, what if we brought that conversation forward? And at the time, I think it was more like we just saw some of our colleagues, friends, and people on social media were like, do they not know? Like, they must just be watching the news. And so we said, well, what if we took our conversations, our private conversations, and we just put it out there for all to hear? And what if we did it boldly? And at first it was hard, but I think you're so afraid of being canceled.
It's so funny. If you go back and listen to our first episode,
We were so careful. We did not say Trump.
From that episode till now, we have completely evolved.
Yeah, we became more convinced that telling the truth and saying what we thought was important, even if we were wrong. Like, would we be bold enough to actually just be wrong? And then admit that we were wrong. Because here's the thing. Now we live in this world where you can't say, well, you can, but you can't, right? You're made to feel, why is it that everybody feels like they can't say what they think? That's not freedom. And that's certainly not freedom of speech.
Everybody gets offended. God.
Yeah, so annoying.
Well, we've
I mean,
offended
honestly,
people.
my journey even started before, even with our business. And then even with my journey with everything that I've started learning and then now unlearning was because I'm skeptical by nature. And like, I was like, wait, let me go prove you wrong. And I'm like, I wish somebody would just try to go prove us wrong.
Right.
And
Yeah, they
because
won't.
once you do, then you'll see. That's how I found out. Like, truly, that's when you start really realizing, what were we talking about on the way here when we were saying, one of our friends, we were like, I wish she would go look at this and just go try to prove us wrong because she's going to find that she's going to align with what we...
Right, if you dig deep enough.
remember
It was
what it was.
because we were talking about, we have a mutual friend who just voted for Biden, because she didn't like Trump. And that was it. So then it's like, okay, well then what do you like about Biden then?
Never.
I don't know.
answered.
I'm just glad Trump's not in. We're like, okay. So we were talking about how now they're is going to do the investigation of hopefully, finally, someone is going to actually look into this laptop and look into the business dealings, the overseas business dealings, and
the
how that could
trafficking.
impacted our country
Right.
and everything. And, it's like, what about this, though? Like, prove this wrong, but there's like this blinder, and that's like our very first episode, we talked about cognitive dissonance. It's like, if you don't want to know, you're just going to shut your eyes. And that's like what a lot of these people do. They're like, well, I don't like this. I don't like Trump or whatever it is. And I don't care what evidence you have to show me because I've already made up my mind.
Right.
And we're trying to get through to those people, but I don't know.
Well, I think what's helping, though, truly, is like, at first we would love to get through to those people, but I think it's even more important to arm people that feel alone in their thinking, but but once they hear us, like the minute I posted one thing about actual science, actual facts, I had so many people come to me say, "Oh my gosh, thank you. I thought I was crazy. I thought I was alone. Thank you for this," because they're not going to go do that research. Like a lot. What was it? One of the pharmacists we interviewed? He was like, most people are superficial skimmers, or they're not even skimming. They're just listening to the news. And so it's not that I have time to do this, but I make time. Like I want to find it because I want to present. We want to present information in a way, not to tell people how to think or what to think, but just to freaking do it.
Because
just
they're not getting both sides of the story.
Right.
No.
In any
No.
situation.
It takes bravery right now to be able to be wrong or to have the conversation to submit yourself to either learn or share or be wrong or be right. It's not as easy as it used to be.
That's right. And to also understand, there can be complexity to your opinion, right? So there can be a topic, and you can feel a lot of ways about that topic or that issue. We're three women that, certainly when they, of course, all this year, ever since the Supreme Court sent the topic of abortion back to the states, which a lot of legal scholars would say that's where it belonged. It was never meant. It should never have been passed to be any kind of constitutional right because it doesn't fall under that category. It falls into the category of the states. Well, as three women, you hear a lot of talk about our reproductive rights, but at the same time, a woman can say, yes, okay, I care about my own body, but I also can equally care about unborn babies. And there can be complexities to your emotions and feelings around that topic. And we live in a world where it is you are this or you are that. You feel this way or you feel that way. You align with this team or you're with that team.
There's
and
no middle ground.
There's no middle ground. There's no nuance to these conversations. And I think that's one thing the three of us can bring to the table is let's talk about it. And we can actually talk about the way we feel about it. But one thing that the three of us will say, which might make us a little unique, I think sometimes in some of the feminine conversations, that's going to offend people that I said it. I don't care. But we don't care about your feelings. Okay, now we'll honor them.
Firehouse.
We belong in a firehouse, right? Now, we'll honor the fact that you have a feeling about it because that's human. But what we won't allow is for your feelings to rewrite truth or to rewrite what's factual. And we have grown, it's like we closed our eyes, it feels like, and we just woke up in this world where your feelings determine what's true for you, and it's your truth instead of the truth.
Yes, that's the best.
Yeah.
This is my truth.
I'm like, really? Well, that's not my truth. So
Enjoy
how's that
your
going to work?
truth, now enjoy the truth.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
I want to go a little deeper in on what you were saying about the people's reality of truth and how there's such a polarizing left and right. We were talking about that before, myself and Steve. You can be diehard in on whatever political leader. It can be local level, it can be federal level, whatever. Friends, doesn't matter. And then they can speak out on one single issue that you don't have the same opinion with, and you write them off as Satan.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like,
What is that?
yeah, I mean, it's not a. I don't know. It's like most folks choose to find something to be hard on somebody else about, and then they find that and they stick with it. And it's like, well, I don't like this person because of this. Well, they've got a laundry list of other ideas that you completely agree with.
Right.
Yeah. There's this thing,
Or it's the opposite. There's people that they are diehard, believe in, like let's say Democrats, and they believe in their Democratic Party, but then Joe Biden, like they cannot acknowledge the border crisis. They cannot acknowledge inflation. They cannot acknowledge gas prices because to acknowledge that means that they're they're acknowledging that there's something wrong with their, so it's like you have people who just write somebody off over one thing, or you have people who accept everything they do, even when it's horrible, because they can't bring themselves to
ego.
Like,
Say we messed up.
to criticize. I mean, it's crazy.
It is.
Because there are things that, like, maybe we loved about what Donald Trump did. Do we love the way he talks? And, no.
And there are some things that he did and still says.
Right. And then it's like pushing the
we're not
vaccine.
happy
We don't
about.
agree with that. We think that's ridiculous. Like, but that doesn't mean that, so we're not like, you can't just be like loyal to, I don't know. You just have to be loyal to your own.
Or expecting a God. Like, it's like the whole world's still looking for God, but you're not going to find that in a person, right? Like, no one's perfect. No one is perfect. So, especially I think we've always said this for years, right? When you went to the polls, it felt like you're going for the lesser of two evils many times, right?
I
Well, that's
very
always.
much believe that.
It's the truth. Like, it's like, well, this person is a jackass, but but he, he's for, let's say, limited government or whatever, something that would matter to me. I can excuse some of the jackassery,
Right.
if I feel like he's not going to go overstep, right?
Well, I've always said, like, even with Trump, I associate it with, like, in the medical field, the doctors. You can have an asshole doctor, but if he knows what he's doing and he does the best job, and you've got to have a major surgery, you're going to go with the asshole instead of the nice one that you don't know if they're going to do, if they don't know what the heck
just
they're
talk
doing.
about
Absolutely.
You
Give
know?
me that guy.
Yeah, I'm hiring him because his hands are good, not because his
Right.
Twitter
With a
account is
bedside
good.
manner, right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What's more important? And right now, it's like our national security is more important. Like
Right.
There's so many things that are
more important.
the border. It just
But
it
isn't
just
it
blows my
interesting?
mind instead of like how you identify.
Well, isn't it interesting, though, that if you look at right now, and I don't know, to be honest with you, we don't even watch news a lot because we will just go read. We read a lot of medical journals and we might see headlines, but then we go dig. And this is what I think if we could encourage any listener to do is if you're not looking for yourself at this point, you're part of the problem. Because what that means is you're blindly following whoever you trust to be telling you the truth. But history has taught that the people we thought were telling us the truth, all the three-letter agencies, FDA, FBI, CDC. Well, we've all seen they have lied to us. That's now, I think that's indisputable, right?
Yeah.
So if you're still blindly trusting and following along, then you're just playing a part in this tribalism that ultimately is a part of the divide, and you're not thinking for yourself.
According to the CDC.
Oh my gosh.
If you say
Yeah.
that. It's a big problem.
Heard that.
Yeah. I can't believe the power didn't just shut off.
I know, right? Right. Oh, listen, I still think the FBI is watching my phone. I really do. I'm
I
like,
know they are.
I'm on the list. I feel like now.
What do you think is some of the contributors to why folks are just so blindly led along? I mean, it's very much like you
Media.
said. They catch the headline and that's it. Is it a generational thing where our parents, they all grew up trusting the news, and it was for the most part was trustworthy.
Exactly.
Right? You
Yeah.
had journalists that did the digging.
Cronkite,
and
right?
that's
Walter Cronkite.
Yeah, I mean, you had journalists that did the digging for you, and then what they were giving you for you to consume was,
Yeah.
I
that was
honestly
firm.
didn't know
Yeah.
that different news stations like shared different views. Like
Right,
I used to
political
think
views, yeah.
until this pandemic, truly, until us going through all of this, I did not realize. I thought you just turn on whatever news, you're just going to get the news. Truly, like that. That's how my head was in the sand. I never even wanted to watch the news. Once I had kids, it was like my TV was never on, or it was on like Wildcrats, But I really think the media is terrible. And then when you talk about generations, my mom, my grandfather was a well-respected OBGYN and like did house calls. Like he was back when it was where the doctors were like the heroes. And I'm not saying there aren't hero doctors out there, okay? But doctors don't think for themselves now. Like they will say, according to the CDC, and I'm like, have you read?
Yeah.
Like the studies that they've used to base their evidence on, like, and they're not doing it. They're not thinking. And so it's like, my doctor says, so that's the generation thing. Well, my doctor says to do this. They're not going to listen to anybody else. But the media, I think the media is the cancer of all
Somehow
of it.
they've like
it is.
lulled us to sleep
Yes.
over the past. Like I don't even know when it started. Was it like JFK and the CIA and all that? Like that's when they coined the term conspiracy theorist. Or
Right.
maybe- I don't know when the Mockingbird thing started, where
Right.
like they're pushing propaganda through news networks to try to like subtly and slowly brainwash people. And it's like I think that's happened. But I think the good news is that people are waking up
Yes.
from the slumber.
Have you seen those news clips? Somebody does it on Instagram pretty well, but it's one message that gets sent out, I guess, Associated Press,
Yeah.
and then you'll
Yes.
hear like
That's the mockingbird type
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
They're all saying the same phrase.
Same
yeah,
phrase.
it's really
That's
creepy.
freaky.
It's creepy because that's how we know that we're not free. We're not free if the same messaging is being propagated out to all of the agencies to say the exact same thing. Because the point of the media, I think, the freedom of the press was there to do what? Hold the government accountable. It was we the people for the people. And that was what it did. It was able to go in and ask those questions on behalf of all Americans and challenge them. You got Peter Ducey up in there is like the only one I
Yes,
ever hear
only
say,
one.
Love him.
hey, what about this? I mean, like, what in the world? And again, I think we've heard from other journalists, they're afraid. They're afraid to ask a question. I remember there was a time, and now, I'm older now, but I can remember where journalists were like offended if they thought you knew their political affiliation, because they'd be like, my job is to report the news.
Yeah.
Now you've got them literally Don Lemon sitting there advocating for the Democrat Party more than anyone else. I mean, there's tons. You got the Rachel Maddows of the world too. I just like you are so not objective, and you can say the same thing with Fox News too. It's like, are you going to give us your editorial, or are you going to report the news? I mean, Don Lemon will sit there and argue with experts that you are your guest. I mean, you should argue and ask questions, but when the expert says we cannot give conclusive evidence, for example, that the hurricanes are caused by global warming. Well, I'm from Florida, and I know that that's not true.
Right.
Well, ding dong, you know what? I don't. Did you go? Have you spent 20 years studying climate change? No. You do what everyone else has done. You report the talking points, and you expect all of America to believe you. And sadly, to answer your question, America is so lazy and apathetic, they believe it.
Right.
It's so easy to just listen and follow along. It takes work.
Yeah.
Look
It's
at
hard
our.
to find the truth. It is hard to find. You can't even
not,
go
yeah.
to journals now. They're
owned.
corrupt. I mean, it is hard. And if you don't know where to look, nobody's going to do it.
No, and it's sad. We look at medical journals a lot because of the whole COVID and vaccine situation, which I thought was important for us, and I think really made us start a
That's what started
podcast.
it,
Is
yeah.
like, we cannot let people die. We cannot let people die. And I tell you, I think that that is one of the things we realized. We could read medical journals, peer reviewed. It was out there, I guess, for peer review. Maybe not all of them were peer reviewed, and we would read the details, and it would say there's incidents of myocarditis, for example. And then you get to the conclusion. Well, there's no evidence that there's any real risk. And you're like,
Completely safe
you
and
just
effective.
outlined it in your whole thing.
Right.
But why do they do that? Because they know people are just going to read the
People read the
conclusions.
conclusion.
They're going to look at that.
It's laziness. It's apathy.
I think the most honorable excuse, if you want to call it an excuse, is there's trust. Like you've heard it a million times. Like, surely they wouldn't, or
Right.
there's no
And
way.
that's why I started doing this. When Amy pointed something out, I was like,
It's hard to
surely
wrap
not-
your mind
Surely
around.
that's not right.
It's hard
Yeah.
to wrap your mind around that people can be like intentionally
Right.
this corrupt or this evil. I
Right.
mean,
And blind.
Yeah.
There are some that really seem to just be.
right.
I mean, the people who get on there and say, I just got my 4th booster and I've had COVID 3 times, but I can't imagine how bad COVID would have been if I hadn't had 2 boosters.
Could have
Right.
been worse.
Yeah.
How did you know that you did you have did you have COVID before getting boosted so that you would know how you would handle COVID? No,
No idea.
like that's it. But again, that's a logic. That's why we called our podcast "Just Think." Where are the thinkers? Where's logic?
Well, that's
Where's
where it's
common
helpful when there's people who are have just the blind trust, because a lot of people are like that, and we understand. We try to come at it from a compassionate standpoint, and not to shame people or make them feel bad. We don't want, the last thing we want is more fear.
No.
It's really, knowledge is power, and when you present information where they can be like, where the light bulb can go off themselves. You know,
Yeah,
where we're
they
not
have to figure it
we're
out.
not shoving it in their faces, trying to make them believe this or believe that, but just, okay, they're saying this, but yet this is what's actually happening, or this person said this, but this other person says this. What do you think? Because they're only seeing one side, just like what you said. And one of the reasons when we were saying we can't imagine the evil and what's going on, another reason that we even started this too was the censorship, and what we were looking into trafficking. We started looking at human trafficking, child trafficking, and we started following. If anybody's listening to Operation Underground Railroad, the Our Rescue, Tim Ballard. He is an amazing human being. Their whole organization is great. We were doing a fundraiser with our team, and we posted about it and did the hashtag Save the Children. They were censoring anybody using the hashtag Save the Children. Okay.
What a weird thing to censor.
So that exactly.
Right?
So then
So
you're
we're
like,
like,
okay,
wait a
why?
minute, wait a minute,
So
wait a
then go down that rabbit
Yeah.
hole. So then
We watched
you
that documentary.
Then you see Dr. Simone Gold and all those doctors up there. Oh my gosh! And what's the lady from Stella, Dr. Stella Manuel?
Stella.
You know, they go to the White House and they're talking about everything that they're using, and nobody's dying. You would think that everybody would be like, "Oh my gosh, what are you using?"
Tell me more.
And they're
Yeah.
censored. And they're censored. So me in the medical, I'm like, wait a minute. When has this ever happened? I mean, I'm in the ER. We have protocols, but there are certain doctors. You know, you're going to go that we even name them like by the doctors. We're doing this protocol, this doctor protocol today, this doctor protocol today. But it's based on their evidence that they've done. They are practicing medicine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, so since when can they not practice medicine and share something that's working, and then they're censored? So that's when I started saying, okay, they must be onto something. Let me go look.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it started. And then I was getting censored, shadow banned,
She
all the
still
things.
is.
I still am.
She still is.
Still am.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody sees my stories. They don't like censor you completely or take you off. They just make it where nobody sees your stuff.
Right.
Well, and of all the things that she shared and the things that they've said that she was
Here's what's
guilty
funny.
of, is none of them were not true. One of them was she was quoting Dr.
It was
Fauci.
a video.
It was
of
a
him
video.
saying something, and they said, "Oh, this is misinformation." We're like, "Well, but it's a
So
video."
are you going to turn him in?
Yeah.
Can we?
How about
Can we turn him in? I mean, I've tried to
So
appeal
weird.
it. It's just crazy.
It's-
Doesn't matter.
That's, to me, if there's nothing else that wakes people up, if you believe in the First Amendment, if you believe that ideas are better when everything can be thrown on the table and vigorously debated and then hash it out, if you don't believe that's the best way to advance a society and find the truth, I don't know what to say to you, because
We're heading down a bad.
well, here's the thing:
Mm-hmm.
the minute that you think it's okay to censor somebody that you don't like, don't think that can't be turned on you in a
Right.
hot minute.
Exactly.
Whoever's in power can then decide what is said. And how would you feel if you were the one that was being censored? The thing is I see people say really stupid things all the time, but I will champion their right to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I will say, let's have this conversation. I think my son said to me the other day, because we got a bad review on the podcast, and they called us fascists. We were fascists, fascist anti-science. Well, I thought it was a reward. An award. I was like,
we
oh,
were
I
laughing.
feel like we're doing something now. We are pissing off the right people. But not that that's what we're trying to do. But it was like the minute that you use fascist and anti-science
Yeah,
to
you're
me.
like, okay.
I know who you're listening to, and it's not the truth. It's the guy who called himself the science, but is not the science. And so that's when, we sit back and we go, how do we get to this place that someone thinks that we don't have the right to share what we're learning? And we invite you to come share it with us. But what we have found, and I know Dr. McCullough, Dr. Malone,
Dr. Cole,
Dr.
Dr.
Cole, Dr. Pierre Corey, they all say they have offered open debate. And in fact, they offered to do this in front of the entire Senate.
Steve Hirsch.
Yes,
offered
Steve
to pay
Hirsch.
millions for somebody to talk to him.
Yeah.
No one will debate. So my son says the other day when he sees the bad review, he's like, well, maybe you should bring people on who don't agree with you. And I said,
we've
who's
asked.
going to do that?
Right,
Yeah.
buddy.
They won't. They will. Let me help everybody understand. We would be happy to talk about this to people who don't see what we see. We would love to. And if we're wrong, we want to know.
Right.
Right?
Sure.
And we say that.
all the time. But they won't show up for the debate. And that tells you everything you need to know.
When all they do is slap a label on you and name calling, attack the character, not the.
Yeah. Like
Well,
what-
now it's bigot, racist, anti-vaxxer, fascist. I mean, they have these very clear labels that are designed to tell all of us to not listen to someone.
or
It
just
is-
shut up.
Yeah,
And just be quiet.
just be quiet.
To your point about the free speech part of it, the news story in Canada, remember all the truckers came in? Do you remember the moment that it all went off the news? So they were trying to silence everybody, and then they brought in the horses and rode through the crowd. And there was an elderly woman who got ran over,
Yes, it's terrible.
and it was like Canada's supposed to be a pretty free place, and they were getting silenced to the point of being run over, and it was like slam on brakes. And suddenly you didn't see anything more about Canada, anything. And then the Venezuela, that whole failure, and Did you see the video of the tanks? They were driving the tanks through people, and suddenly that disappeared. It was, if you lose freedom of speech, it's a real downhill.
It's downhill.
Yeah.
It's downhill.
We
Fast.
talk about that all the time too, with like stories that we follow. It's
Even
like they
things
just
that
go
we talk
away.
about, and it's like top of mind.
Yeah, top of mind.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, what
But
happened
then
with
we
that?
forget.
Because
Then we even forget because they just stop talking about it.
Yeah.
it just goes away. It's
Oh,
bizarre.
well, in the Atlantic, someone wrote an article and said, hey, let's just make this all go away. Maybe we didn't have it all right, but let's just call an amnesty. let's have an agreement.
Oh,
Like,
And hell no.
Hells no.
And it's not even because I am a person who really does believe in forgiveness and that you have to forgive and you do have to move on. But no, we're not. And here's why we're not. They're going to do it again, and it's already been done again. I mean, when you have your highest paid federal official testify before the Senate, we do not do gain of function research. When you clearly do gain of function research, it's the reason the Obama administration made you leave the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and go to China because of what you were doing. And you say you don't do it. And then a little bit of time goes off because people forget. And then it comes out, at Boston University, they have merged together all the coronaviruses and made a coronavirus that's 80% lethal. That's not gain of function. That is gain of function research on our soil. They will do it again. And the only thing that will stop them is we the people. And it will require enough of us who know better to have the courage to stand. I never thought I would live in my lifetime where I would really believe give me liberty or give me death is something I could honestly feel.
Yep.
I'm there. I'm there.
Yep.
You'll have to kill me before I let you do this to my children.
Yeah.
And that's where and that's the best part of this is the mama bears have awakened.
Poke the mama bear.
And now we need the Papa Bears because,
Yes.
and I want to apologize to the Papa Bears because I do feel that over the years, in an effort to give women more rights or more of a voice or more opportunity, we denigrated men in some ways. And we're living with consequences of that now. Some men, you need to check yourself and you need to find your courage again in your voice. And if there were any of us women that ever made you feel like you didn't have a place at this table and you could be the man that you're meant to be, we were wrong. Because we need men to show up. If you'll notice right now, there's a lot of women that are fighting for these kids. We need the men to show up.
Yes.
We need the men to show up too. And that's where this will stop. You get parents.
Yes.
You get parents to say, and if you'll notice, who was it that voted more red in this? It was married couples, married women and married men.
Well, they're saying too, like that the new party is the parents' party.
What needs to
Forget
be.
the Republican Party. We call
Yeah.
it the parents' party
Yeah.
because that's what it is.
Don't screw with my kids.
Yeah.
With education and
All the things.
It benefits the opposite side of what you're saying to keep everybody mad at each other and
Oh, yeah.
split. You mentioned it earlier, the conversation, if you have one thing wrong, then it destroys the relationship or you can't talk.
Yeah.
How can we change that and move it to where, okay, we disagree on this, but we have this big pile of things we do agree on. How do we make that normal?
I think what you said about let's figure out what we agree on first.
Right.
Like if we start like, okay, well, what can we agree on? Then it kind of we can be more approachable to each other. We're not defensive. And then we can maybe segue into like, okay, well, here's some differences. But knowing how much you have in common with somebody, I think it will make a huge
Well,
difference.
that just reminds you of the mutual
humanity and
respect
just-
that
yeah.
you have too for each other. You can still be friends and disagree on certain things. We have a friend that agrees with us on the health related things and personal medical choice and freedom, but different political views. But we're united on that, and I think that that's great that we can do that. And so I think that we can find, if we can find those, and I think just try. Maybe we just all need to flip the switch and just like try to focus on the good, on the positive. You know.
Yeah.
Well, did you guys see Joe Rogan interview Dr.
Also
Phil?
easier to have the tougher conversations too. Sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt.
no,
like
what-
if you know that you can agree on something
Right.
because you respect their opinion on that and you trust their opinion on that, then
And their wisdom,
then
right?
right. And so then it's easier to accept even if you don't believe it at first, to accept what they're saying on something
They're
that you
not
disagree
completely
with.
ignorant.
They're not. Well,
Yeah.
and they're not going to be just.
There's
mad
some
at you.
people
They're
I
gonna be
ain't
like,
debating.
okay,
Yeah.
right.
There's some people I ain't even sure. I mean,
They just got a little
No.
bit of
Some
smarts
of them
in
you
there.
just have to pray.
Yeah.
Say, bless
well,
your
we
heart.
can't help you.
go on. By the way, get your kids off TikTok. That's the one
Oh
thing
my
I'll say.
gosh.
But if you go on TikTok and you watch some of these youngins talk about stuff. I mean, it's frightening. I think it's a really good advertisement for the failure of American education. To hear some of the things these kids think are logical or that they say. But back to Dr. Phil and Joe Rogan. It was actually a really good podcast episode. And Dr. Phil says, he's like, look, I don't know enough about politics to even talk about it. Like, and I don't want to. He said, but we got to bring some common sense back into this. And he's been taking heat because he's been doing shows where he brings people with two opinions together, like, so two opposite, and then they have, as good as you can, I think, cordial conversation. We've got to normalize that again, where you don't just send all the Fox News people over here and the CNN people over here. You have to bring them together. And as Amy said, let's talk about what we agree on. What are the objectives we share that are the same? Who doesn't want our education system to be better? Right? Like,
Who wants dumb kids?
nobody wants, and we're failing. Where we were in the top 3 in almost every category, we are now in the 30s. In North Carolina, we interviewed John Amanchukwu, and he spoke at the Wake County School Board, and he said, you are all about this CRT and the CRT money that is doing nothing for black children, because 78% of them, I think it was K through 8th girls or 3 through 8th. I don't remember.
I can't remember the exact ages.
78% of black children are below reading level in North Carolina. In North Carolina, how did we get here?
Right.
You're more concerned about making sure a child has a litter box because they think they're a cat in the classroom than you are about teaching them how to read. That's one of the problems. So, listen, if you want to go down this agenda of identification and how these children identify, you still don't want them to fail at math, right?
Want them to be
and reading.
a dumb cat.
A dumb cat.
We need
be
a smart
cat. At least be a smart cat.
I mean,
well, look, when I dropped my son off at high school, he started high school this year, and I see so many kids or whatever. But one thing I have noticed that I'm just like, oh my gosh, is seeing the kids in the ROTC uniforms. And I tell my son, I'm like, God bless those kids, because there are not many anymore that are going to be tough enough, have enough grit, I'm worried. I'm worried about is like our military in the next 10 to 15 years. Who is going to be, defending this country? And so I see like the 1 or 2 kids that are still brave enough and like, have enough guts to like put on an ROTC uniform and walk around. I'm like, oh, there's not many of them, but geez.
Well, just this morning, I saw on social media in one of the high schools in Wake County, one of her children texted her and said, I cannot believe the kids in my Spanish class, only 11 of us will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
No.
Many of them are talking.
Do you remember that story?
I'm going to tell you something. How are you going to I couldn't even be a teacher. Because I'm going to tell you something. If a child did not stand up, I would tell y'all right now, I'd be on the news. I'd be like, you're going to stand up is what you're going to do. You're going to stand up.
Well, no, do you not remember when we went to that, when we were trying to figure out what we were doing with our kids?
Yes. Okay.
And there was a mom that spoke. This was here in Wilmington. And her, I guess I won't say the school, but her daughter had gone, I think it was 9th grade.
Yeah.
And at this school, and I think it was like first day, they asked their pronoun, like their name and pronoun. And she was like, why are they doing that? Okay. This is just the daughter coming home and telling her mom about this. So then she was the only kid in the class that would stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Are you serious?
I'm actually so glad that they're still at least
Well, and didn't the
saying it
principal
or playing
give
it.
her grief because she had an American flag sticker on her laptop
Yes,
or something?
something
Like it was
like
something
this, and I'm like,
like
I
she
was
was
like,
targeted
what?
and just kind of like
That's
treated
strange.
differently. Yeah.
Yeah.
So weird.
My sister's a teacher in the community that I live in. It's very small. I live in the very north side of Duplin County, so we got our own little pocket, our own little ecosystem up here. Surrounded
Yeah.
by farmers.
Love it.
Oh,
love it.
that's
Love
right.
it.
Yes.
We might
the,
move
uh,
here.
Yes.
Yes.
All our
some
kids, all the kids that go to school, they're all neighbors. Virus, the teachers,
Yes.
they're all neighbors.
Yeah.
and so on. But that's part of the problem is the teachers who have the same belief of, well, they would never. We're just. It seems like the people who have any sense are also very naive.
Yeah.
in the fact that it's like, we would never do that to somebody, so nobody would ever do that to us.
Mhm.
We would never
Yes.
push an agenda or a belief on somebody, whether you're a Christian, a Muslim, whatever. Just using religion for an example.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're not going to push that on anybody else. So we think nobody would push that on us, but it's not what happens.
Yeah.
It's not reality.
Mhm.
And our teachers, the good ones, they're instilled with the sense that they're going to lose their jobs if they don't conform to this curriculum and this new way of schooling. And most of them don't want to lose their jobs. They want to teach, but they're
Right.
losing the passion for what the job actually is supposed to be
That's
doing.
it.
Exactly.
Because the new focus is this thing that they don't believe in.
Mm.
And as human minds work, negativity always outweighs positivity.
That's it.
All the time. You're a fantastic teacher. You're a fantastic educator. You're compassionate to the children. You love every one of them. You know them by name. But now you have to teach them something that you don't believe
That you
in.
don't agree
What
with.
do you think their minds are thinking?
Right.
They're
Yeah.
not thinking about how compassionate they are. I can show them compassion. They're thinking about, I'm violating my moral code by teaching this, and I'm not going to do it. So what do? They leave, and what are they replaced by?
Mm-hmm.
Someone
Somebody
who will.
who's very willing to do
exactly.
that.
That's
That's
it.
right.
And this
Who
is
doesn't
what's
share
happening.
moral
We need a
values
whole
that we do.
parallel system with education and with the
Healthcare,
healthcare.
everything.
Well, and then those children and parents in that classroom who have the means leave the school system
That's right.
because they're not going to put up with it. So then they go somewhere else. Then what is that? That's creating more disparity between the haves and the have-nots. Because if you have the means, even if the means that you're homeschooling, but you're going to invest the time in your kids to homeschool them, that's having something that perhaps a poor single mom does not have, right?
Absolutely.
And so the people who want to even the playing field are actually dividing us more. And I'm watching it happen in healthcare. So many of us who know that the system is broken will go pay out of pocket for a good doctor.
Right.
Well, that's a privilege, right? That's not something everyone has. So what it's doing, it's creating a place for the haves to go find the things that work, that hold to traditional values, and then those who don't are stuck in this craziness. And I'm watching it happen, and I don't see that changing. And that's concerning.
It's the part of voting that's the least celebrated, but it's the most important. Is like the local elections,
Yes.
the school board stuff.
We have, if there's anything that we have learned through
And
this,
we are pumped about our new Hanover County.
Yes.
Has flipped our school board, and we have 4
Well, Wake County
awesome
did not.
candidates
So
coming in.
you had a post recently. It was telling everybody to go vote or encouraging everybody, and you said something about don't just look at the letter beside
Right.
their name, and it's so important. Like we've had conversations about that. Sheriff McMahon, I voted for him.
Leanne.
I lean
Leanne
pretty
Pierce.
right,
Yeah.
but there are multiples that I voted for
Yes.
with Democrat because I'm voting for the person and
Yes.
their belief structure, not just a party affiliation.
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, in this last election, you heard a lot of, nope, just vote red, right? If you hate the way the world's been, just vote red. And I understood why people said that because historically it was the red. And listen, we've interviewed so many Democrats that said this. They're like, I've never voted Republican in my life. I'm voting Republican this time because the Republicans represented less of the shutdown and the things that happened over the last 2 years. However, what happened once we sent those Republicans back to elect the Senate majority leaders? What happened in the Senate? The Senate minority leader, they put McConnell right back in there. It is my opinion, as a former Republican, now registered unaffiliated, that he is part of the problem. You've got these people who have lifetime
hate
politicians, and they are as crooked as they can be. Now, I'm not saying he's crooked. I'm saying I don't believe he's not crooked.
Yeah.
And so, in a lot of other, there was only 11 Republicans that did not vote for him. That's unreal. You are voting for the same stuff another day, right? And so that's why I say, do what you did. Look at the person. Are they going to, first of all, will they vote in some term limits? That'd be great.
That's what I
right?
want.
Go vote for people who are holding your principles more than anything else, because like you said, if you lean right, there might be more Republicans that do that, but it's not everybody. And I can tell you, in the state of North Carolina, the last 2 senators we had, I wouldn't give you 2 cents for either one of them.
Yeah.
And I think they were part of that power Republican Party, the dirty swamp of D.C.
Well, I think what Trump taught us or taught me is that we need grassroots. We need people who are not politicians. We need people who have strong beliefs and are not bought and paid for.
Not career politicians.
That's
Not
it.
career
Like
politicians.
when we talked about to Tony
With
Cowden.
life
Right.
experience.
Yeah, with going to DC, spending decades there. By the time you've been there decades, you're bought and paid for. I mean, this is what we're finding out. It's
Right.
just we need people to go in who just have a strong belief and want to speak for the people, and who truly hold fast to that and try, I say try not to get corrupted, because you know what's going to happen. And we talk about this too. These people go in, you have these grassroots and they have these great intentions and they're so excited to get to DC and make change. The minute they get there, it's like the vultures descend. It's like, oh, okay, well, here, will you come with me, and I'm going to get you all this money for your campaigns, but you just got to make sure you do this for me. And however it all works, I don't know. It's just some wicked, disgusting web.
Disgusting.
That happens on every level of politics. too,
Yes,
by the way.
but I think we need the
Yeah.
more people we can get in who are not going in with that experience or that backing, then they can still have a voice. They don't have to be beholden to anyone. And there were several in this last midterm that they don't have. There are some grassroots in there.
You
And
mentioned
hopefully-
Tony Cowden.
Yes.
I was
Love
pulling
Tony.
for him.
We were
Yeah.
too.
Oh, yeah.
We're real careful in our podcast too to not like promote someone that's running for. We brought Tony on as
we
sort of
don't.
the insider.
Yeah.
Would you say what?
I said, damn if we don't.
Oh wait, hey, and listen,
Hey,
y'all can, and the difference is that we said our premise is to tell people to think but not what to think, is to inspire thought. We wanted to attract as many people as we could that perhaps
We're trying to get
did
people who
vote differently
don't
than we
agree.
did.
You're
you
doing
know?
the right thing. Yeah. absolutely.
But to your point, sometimes you do want to tell people, do not vote for this person and please vote
Yeah.
for that person. Tony was one of those that we really loved because he had an insider's perspective as someone who went up against the establishment Republicans. And we know some of our listeners might think that we lean more right anyway. We thought, well, let's bring in someone that's challenging a Republican for his seat. And the stories that he can tell of how it's like once they're in and they've been over and done the bidding of the Republican or Democratic Party, like they're in, and
Yeah.
and we're screwed.
yeah,
I want to pose a challenge because I believe every argument has two sides.
Yeah.
So my challenge would be if, as far as term limit goes, that's the context of the
Yeah.
challenge. If we were on the side that we're opposing,
Yeah.
and where we want term limits, I agree with term limits 100%. However, if there was people in the positions doing things exactly how we saw them fit, would we be advocating for term limits
Right.
so hard?
You know who I think about is Ron Johnson.
Is that just what we're up
Yeah.
against? I mean,
So because I'm thinking about Senator Ron Johnson, he was done. He actually had promised his wife he wasn't going anymore, but he's so big on he is the only one
Only
fighting
one.
for the vaccine
Injured.
vaccine injured,
All
and
right.
to go hold them accountable. And he is literally the only one. And so he ran for another term, and luckily he got in.
I mean, that's a great point.
But that's a great point. Like, honestly, when we
Yeah.
just said term, I thought about him. And so I'm glad you brought that up because that is what's hard. So it's like, how do you draw the line?
We have to change the system, right?
Yeah.
So you'd have to change the lobbying system where
I wish
these
they would
where
put
people get
publicly
it.
what they voted for.
Well, here's the thing: if people weren't getting rich in DC, they wouldn't stay. It's a
Right.
hard job to do. If
Right.
we made it to where these people could not get rich off their jobs,
Yes.
they wouldn't
Yes.
stay forever. Now,
Insider trading.
yes,
Right.
I mean
Kickbacks.
Nancy Pelosi. Can we talk about Nancy
yeah.
Pelosi's husband? Anybody believe that he did not know that guy?
You've never been in a hammer fight in your underwear?
I have never. First of all,
what are
my
you
God.
doing
Yeah,
on Tuesdays?
what is wrong with you? You haven't lived.
You-
until you've done that.
y'all, I just think, listen, he might be as innocent as they come on that.
Okay.
He's not innocent on insider trading, but he could be very innocent in the situation. He really could have been a victim, and I hate that he got hit by a hammer. I'm not advocating violence in any way, or that if
But
someone
it's a
broke in his
shady
house.
situation.
But so much about this does not add up.
Well,
and NBC reports on it, and then the reporter goes missing,
Yeah.
and they won't revisit the conversation.
So weird.
And
That
this
tells
isn't a
you
new reporter.
everything.
This is a seasoned
so
reporter.
weird.
That's
That
been there
Miguel,
for, yes.
like we've
Poor
all heard
Miguel.
his name.
Is Miguel alive? Miguel's
I don't
alive,
know.
right?
We
We don't
don't
know.
know.
We don't know if Miguel's alive.
Do y'all know?
Well, y'all know Nancy's
don't
got
know.
some
I don't know.
strings she's pulling. Come on,
Ooh,
come
don't
on.
cross Nancy.
But then she's like, I'm done. I'm not gonna buy. Listen, to your point, this insider trading thing, the fact that we had it in our own state, one of our senators basically did that. It was Oh gosh, in the state of North Carolina, y'all, who was the other Republican? We had why can't we think of names? Okay, one of the North Carolina senators, a couple years, it was in the last 2 years, insider trading. Remember, it was, and he didn't run for re-election.
This was before I actually started paying
I know.
attention.
It's like, wait, this is before we didn't pay attention back then, Holly.
Sorry. I don't know why I can't get his name to my head. All of a sudden, I can see his face, but he did it. I mean, he did it, and they all do, and they sit on these committees. He sits on the finance committee or whatever. Like, he's on a committee where he would know.
Well, there's no consequences.
And he
Make
all of a
that
sudden
money,
dumps
honey.
a bunch of stock right before an announcement that he was privy to the information. Come on, dude, don't lie. And this is the other thing that just that whole piece of that they're getting rich by sitting on these committees. They know stuff. You shouldn't be able to own stock in companies that you sit in conversations where you know what's going to happen to that company.
Conflict of interest.
Martha Stewart went to jail for this. I don't understand why they're not.
Right.
So unless we change the swamp, unless we really do drain the swamp and we change the system, I feel like term limits are all you're going to have, because if they're going to stay to get that money and that power, that's what it seems like. They're going to stay to get it. The bad ones will.
Yeah.
So
If they have term limits, they just need to have somebody else following them that's going to truly follow in
Yeah,
their
they
footsteps.
need a
Well, mentor.
protege.
Kind of like a
Mentor
president,
somebody.
vice president, but here, come on up. This is, if you like me, I've got to leave, but here's who you need.
Yeah.
mentor
But
some
it seems
people.
like all the great.
I don't know.
It seems like all the successful organizations. I guess it depends on how you view success, but take our military for example. That is the structure. You have a ranking structure, and that's how it goes.
Yeah.
So you start at the bottom and you work your way up, and then
That's
there's
it.
always somebody coming and taking your place. So why can't politics work like that?
Yeah.
If your goal is to be the president, then start with high school stuff, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Just have some side of path, and then it's clear for everybody else.
Right.
I can't be president if I never served as this. And I think there is some stipulations. I'm not savvy on what they are.
Yeah.
I don't either.
But
I'm not either.
Well, like Holly said, they
It's
should all
always
have
a mentorship.
take an economics course.
Economics,
Yeah.
like multiple
it should be
economics
required
courses.
before you can be a politician.
I mean, I
mean,
can't even
there should be a
understand.
path.
They have. What we've done economically to this country, and you've got people like Joe Biden who've never run a business. They don't know. He went to
Professional politician is what he is.
professional politician.
That's why I
You
always
have
just
no
hated-
idea about what it is.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. Some of the toughest, other than farmers in my life, the second toughest person was an entrepreneur. Always, that I knew. It was that you had your farmers were the toughest I knew, and then entrepreneurs, because they had to have some serious grit and some guts
Right.
to balls.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
And balls. Sorry, I forget where I'm at. I'm in a firehouse. I can say whatever I want. You got to have that, because you're putting your neck on the line, right? And we need more of those people. We need more of those people in DC, the salt of the earth people who got some grit and know what hard work is, and also don't feel entitled to anything. The most concerning thing when you think about what's going on in our classrooms right now, that is telling you what the next generation is going to be like. And we've got a classroom of kids that don't want to stand for the national anthem, or ball players that want to kneel. And you can have issues with your country all you want, but if you cannot appreciate the fact of where this country came from and what it's done, you're stupid.
Well, just leave.
And
Yeah, bye.
Go find a better country.
It's uneducated and it's ignorant, because nothing's perfect about the United States of America. It's never going to be. It's run by people, and people aren't perfect. But the fact is, they want to throw our, the fact that we have a history of slavery is terrible. Who doesn't think that? That was terrible.
Right.
It was also happening around the world at the time. It wasn't like we were the country with slaves. That was, they were sold into slavery by their own people. Are we ever going to talk about that conversation? It's a sad black eye in the history of the world, but it's not just on America. And while we hate that, the fact that we could come along and have a Martin Luther King Jr. become a hero with a national holiday because he fought for the rights of those people to have the same rights as you and I, that's huge. Right? And then on top of that, you got the Oprah Winfrey's of the world and the Barack Obamas of the world that can make it in this country.
Right.
Yet we act like that's not possible. That's crazy.
Like, why are we not
We're going
celebrating that?
backwards.
It should
and
be
and
celebrated.
focusing on the positive. Focusing on
It's never going to be perfect, but it is the best thing we got. It's the hope of the world right now. And and the fact that we're struggling so much is a sad commentary on the rest of the world.
right.
Because
They're watching and laughing.
we've got to have some appreciation for it.
Terrible.
I feel.
Scary.
I have a short theory that it's probably applies to that, but it's like an 80-20 rule in my head. I think 80% of the country feels closely to what you just stated.
Yeah.
20% have different views, but the media has made it to where it seems like
Exactly.
that it's split, or
Yeah.
they make it to where we just end up fighting about small issues instead of having the conversation about the common sense middle ground.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
I mean, that's
totally
why it's
agree.
like the silent majority.
Yeah.
Correct.
it's a
The
lot of-
silent majority.
And
yeah.
then people don't talk about it though because the media makes you think that everybody believes that. And so then the people who believe that, like with 80% of us, they're afraid to speak about it because they
Yeah.
don't want to hurt people's feelings because they think that everybody feels the other way. You know? And this could be on any topic.
Sure.
Right.
It's just whatever's opposite of what the media is portraying.
It's the media is the problem.
I'm
Yeah.
telling you, the
Period.
media is the problem.
Don't you think that of the last election? I thought the media was a big
Yeah.
part of the
Oh,
problem.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
think that and the fact that stupid Lindsey Graham came out. See, this is me on Republicans too. I am an equal opportunity offender. But Lindsey Graham came out and was like, we're going to pass a law against abortion in this country. We're going to make a federal law against abortion. I was like, why are you saying that right now? What was the point? Did he think he was going to rally the Republican base? How out of touch are you?
Right.
It was like, that's not the time to bring that up. And I think that made women go out and vote blue. That didn't want to. They didn't want to.
It
but they
was
were
by
scared.
design.
Yeah. Somebody put him up to that.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
there's just no reason
There's
why he would
corruption
go out
all
there
over.
and say that.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I hated politics. I never even,
Yeah.
and I honestly, I did because I was like, well, it doesn't affect me. That was my mindset. And
Yeah.
I mean, I will embarrassingly and, admit it and regretfully admit that. But now that I know better, I do better. And I think also having kids, it's
Yeah.
true that because this isn't for me, this is for them. I
So-
mean, it is for me a little bit, but it's a lot mostly for them.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have a slightly different, similar but different view. The national anthem in the school thing.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be a rule that they have to stand up. I want them to want to stand up.
stand up.
Yeah.
Right. But don't you think, like I think
that.
I developed, though, my patriotism at school. And it was, I mean, I certainly had patriotic parents,
Yeah.
but
I'm not saying that you want them to have a rule that they have to,
No.
but I know you definitely
See,
want
no.
them
With
to.
us, it was
I
we
want
were
them
like,
to
like
do
our
it.
kids would go to, like 3 of our kids.
Yeah.
the 2 of Kristen's and 1 of mine go to a private Christian school here in town, and they just wrapped up their unit study, and we went in.
love it.
And it was so refreshing that we come in and these are 2nd graders. They're 7 years old, sang the national anthem to us. And they told us all about the Constitution. And then they sang all 50 states, like very like lively and patriotic. And so
was
they are
so
teaching,
cute.
there are schools, but like I said, it's a private, we're paying for this. We're paying for them to teach this
But it
patriotism.
is refreshing because.
But I'm like,
I mean,
so nice because I don't think they do this. My boys are 14 and 12, and I don't know if they know the national anthem.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't taught it to them. That's probably my fault. But
or
like,
the preamble or any of those.
Oh, right.
Like,
Like, all
our
those
kids
things,
had
like,
to
they-
Even
memorize.
so, see, to
Yeah.
us, it wasn't like they made us. It was just understood. I
Right.
remember in school. I remember specifically in school, they do the morning announcements. We stand up, we do that.
Pledge
and
of
do a
allegiance.
moment of
Pledge of
silence,
allegiance. Yeah,
and
yeah. The
then,
moment of silence. Yeah, I don't know if
that
they do
was
that
just.
anymore.
It wasn't like, oh, you can do it or not. It was just that's
Yeah.
what we did,
Yeah.
and it wasn't like they were forcing us. It didn't feel forced.
Yeah.
And now it just feels so much. It's so crazy how they're like, oh, you have all these choices here. But you don't have a choice with the vaccine, or you don't have a choice with this. Like there's like it's so
Right.
it's so crazy.
Backwards. It's so backwards.
If you know real history, like World War One,
Yes.
II, if you know those, then you'll stand up right away.
That's
and,
it.
Yeah.
And you
Yep.
look at the at the NC State. I'm an NC State graduate, and we go to all the football games, and they always have Military Appreciation Day. It's my favorite game, And they bring the flag the size of the football field gets rolled out. One year, the band was playing "Amazing Grace." I mean,
I
there
mean,
was
all
not
that,
a
like,
dry
get
eye out of 60,000 people. Everybody was like, "Oh my god!" It was beautiful, and it was so refreshing, right? Because this was at the time when the kneeling was happening, and this was happening here at my alma mater, and I just remember thinking, "Thank God, we're still doing this." But they'll ask the veterans to stand, and they'll put the camera on them, and there'll be some men who are being helped to stand. One was a World War II veteran this year, and I mean, just tears of like gratitude. It's like you said, if you know history, you'll stand.
Well, this is what's sad is that people don't even know how much they should freaking respect our country, these people, and what they have fought for. And I mean, that is why we sing that. that is why we stand up and say Pledge of Allegiance. That is why I can't believe that people, they're trying to make us forget. They're trying to make us forget.
We would be speaking German on this side of the country.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, and then from the Mississippi West, you'd be speaking Japanese if that war went different.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And do you remember, I mean, again, just some of the things that have struck me through history, and I have to also thank God for my kids' private Christian school education, which, by the way, was a sacrifice. I just want to say, like, let's not pretend like it's a bunch of rich kids all at school. Okay, like many of us made serious sacrifices for our kids to do that.
It's not easy.
And I know some people can't, but I will tell you this: the fact that they learned history and would come home and tell me, and they would tell me stuff that I wasn't taught in school,
Right.
and just really blown away by things like the fact that we didn't really want to get in that war. We didn't really want to get in World War II. If you look back at all that, that wasn't a war we were anxious to take part in.
No, we held out
until we were attacked. And when we were attacked, then what? Japan, I think it was the Emperor of Japan who said, "I fear we've awakened the sleeping giant." Well, he did.
Yeah, he was right.
And here's the thing about that. We didn't want to go. We were attacked. We got involved because of that. I kind of wish we would go back to some of that foreign policy, to be honest. Like, can we please look after Americans first?
You mean you don't want $40 billion?
I don't want $40 billion in the Ukraine. I don't.
Yeah.
You know, again. But also a part of history that is really getting rewritten is the Civil War, and that was really eye-opening to me to see how many of the debates that were going on in the southern states. There were many people who did not want slavery in the South. But that's not told. It was like all the bigots were in the South and all the free people were in the North. They didn't free slaves in the North. You guys know that, right? When the Emancipation Proclamation freed them in the South, but not the North. And so some of these details of history, you realize things are getting rewritten because of why? Because then sort of the common acceptance is the racists are in the South and the non-racists are in the North. And that's how, thank God, the North won the Civil War. Well, I'm glad the North won because we're the United States. But some of the things like General Lee freeing his slaves before the war, his wife was a staunch abolitionist. You know, things that just aren't told anymore. That it was nuance to that war. There was conversations to that war that go beyond just slavery. A lot of it was states' rights, right? But these are things that aren't taught. And we got to go back to teaching them, or we're going to lose. It's going to never be taught.
You can't teach one-sided history or partial history. Like, how else are we going to have people think? And,
It's usually a paragraph.
Our kids, to me, it teaches them empathy. It teaches to know, like, oh my gosh, this was terrible that what they went through. We never want that to happen again.
Never again.
You know, so instead of saying you're the oppressor, they're the oppressed, or the victim, and that mentality, it's just why. Like it's all just causing more division, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's sad.
Well, we got to go back to teaching history.
Yes, we do.
We do, big time.
My fear is whatever they're taking out, you're not going to get put back, and even if you get it put back, it's not going to be the same as it was before. So
That's me.
I was like, I hear music or I hear something.
So I guess moving forward, what would be the hope as far as what would want to be taught? Because they remove something, you're not getting it back. Even if they say, okay, we'll give it back, it's not going to be the same. So if you could stop teaching history, at what point would you want to pick up on it and reteach? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if they've taken what they liked out of the Civil War and made that fit the narrative or agenda or whatever, and they're like, okay, well, that's the scratch. Where do we start over and start teaching forward?
Yeah.
To tell both sides of everything.
Tell both sides. Well, you know, that's been the debate with CRT, right? Is that people were accusing those of us who didn't want CRT, they were accusing us of saying, oh, you don't want history to be taught. And I'm like, oh my gosh, please teach the history. Because I don't want to repeat it. I don't want to go back to slavery. I don't want to go back to oppression. I don't want to go back to manual labor that's not paid. Let's not, getting rich off cotton with free labor. Let's not do that.
You guys have daughters?
And they do.
She gets through no matter what. Do you guys mind if we take a
Please take it.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, that
Hey, this is
that ring comes through, and I was
priority.
That's
That was a
priority.
nice next. That was a seventh inning stretch.
like, yeah,
And look, we got a refill.
Yeah, we
perfect.
did. I mean,
It all worked
who's
out.
driving? Who's driving this
It all
time?
worked out.
Oh, mercy.
So with the pandemic hopefully coming to an end. What I kind of gathered from
Wait, didn't Biden already say it was
Biden
over?
said Biden said one more spring.
He
one
said it
more
was
spring.
over,
Yeah.
but then he said
The winter of death.
Yeah. The winter of death.
That was last winter.
But
That was
then
last
just a couple, month ago, he said the
He said it was
pandemic's over.
over.
But then he just extended the
Extended the
emergency.
emergency.
Yes,
Yeah.
isn't
Right.
this so amazing?
well, I guess to the people who
believe it's over.
Yeah, who believe it's kind of over. That's me. It's
Me
kinda
too.
All of
Old
us.
news, but
Yeah.
It's been over.
so it seems like the inception of y'all's podcast was kind of centered around that, the political views, the where that kind of was going. When all that goes away,
Yeah.
what are y'all gonna talk about?
We're going to change the whole medical system. So we're going to do.
We are.
I don't think there's
Health
ever
and
going to be
wellness.
something. There's never going to be nothing for us to talk about.
Right.
Every time we're
Amen.
like, okay, can
Yeah.
we just like relax? And I'm like, there's always something.
There's always something.
Always
We don't ever
something.
get a
It's
day
not really
off.
all
Yeah.
politics.
We don't
It's
get a
just
day
every-
off to stop thinking. You know, it's so interesting. So because we run businesses and we're
just
moms
think too
and
much.
we, and my husband and I are entrepreneurs in multiple things. So there's never a time I'm not. My brain is going pretty much 24/7.
Understand.
Yeah, and so when we really do take seriously this idea that we're going to research what we talk about. We're not just going to read headlines. We're going to go deep. We're going to figure this out. Well, that's time consuming, right? And so it does take a considerable amount of time. And we do have people now reaching out to us saying they want to pay us for the podcast, which is great. See if we can get us some sponsors. But I can tell you that even that doesn't matter. We need more time. We need more time. We always need more time than we need money. And so that is the hard part of this. But we're so committed to. We really feel called to this. And I can't emphasize that enough. On the days where I say, oh, should I not have said that? Because I'm the one who's going to say it. It probably shouldn't be said. Yeah.
We share that guilt.
Yeah. I'm like, I am so going to be canceled. I'm not going to be canceled because guess what? I'm never going to let them cancel me. That's the difference. I'm not apologizing for what I said. If I was wrong, I'll say I was wrong. But I'm not apologizing for what I say because when I say it in that moment, I mean what I'm saying. And that's where we all have to be. This whole cancel culture goes away when we say, you can't cancel me. Dave Chappelle is the most beautiful example of that. Did you guys hear his SNL monologue?
That was so
15
good.
minutes of pure genius.
Yeah.
Who else on earth could talk both sides of the arguments and be so eloquent and right?
And
You know?
funny.
And funny.
And
yeah.
funny. But when he talks about Kanye, he's like, Kanye, here's how you buy 15 minutes, right? When he says, first of all, I'm for Jews. I'm not against Jews. He qualified what he was saying before he went into the nuance of the conversation. That's important. You can take a soundbite from anybody and they sound like a moron, right?
Yep.
And we see that all the time with Biden, even though I do think he's a moron. You can take his sound bites out of what he's saying. He sounds like a blubbering idiot. He's not a blubbering idiot 24/7.
Well, they did that with Trump
Okay.
too.
I was
And they
gonna
did.
say.
They did. And then they can create this,
They do it to everybody.
They do it to everybody. But I do think that we feel committed to free speech, number one, and we're going to keep talking. And we're going to do that because we want to model and give courage to other people to talk to. You may not have a podcast, but you can talk to your friends.
Yeah.
You know?
And if for some reason like everything gets great and we have no things to help people think about,
Yeah.
I think we would go more into like a health and wellness space. Like we want to incorporate more
Yes.
just how to be well, how to be healthy,
Right. Oh, yeah.
caring about your health, and even
Absolutely.
like we did a podcast recently on like more parenting.
Yes.
And we should just totally shake things up and just do a funny one someday.
Yes,
Just,
we should.
like just talk and not have anything
Anything serious to
just
say?
think about, but
Yes.
just be like us.
Just like-
and
Well,
we're
if we
girl
keep
talk.
drinking,
I know.
whiskey
So-
at 10:30 or
Like,
11.
like the fire, like the kitchen table at the
yeah,
At
we'll
the
do that
firehouse.
at the bald. Well, that'll be our bald head.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
podcast. But yeah,
But I do think that, to your point, there's a lot of systems that are really screwed up. The political system and the medical system and the media.
And
so
education.
The way that in education,
all of it.
and the way that we're addressing this is we're going to address media by creating an alternative. If you want to hear, if you want to find, we do a Substack. Kristen puts a Substack together after every episode that's here's our evidence. So we talked about this, but here's where we got this. If you can refute it, bring it. No one ever has.
right.
So that's the first thing. We're going to change the medical system by bringing on more and more doctors, nurses, and physicians that are doing it differently, that are committed to breaking down their control by big pharma and by basically your medical schools that are also funded by big pharma and your journals that are, by the way, also funded by big pharma. They're committed to doing it differently. We're going to keep interviewing them and we're going to connect people to them and we're going to help make that medical system change. And we may not change the existing one, but we'll bring you a new one.
But we also know people like Dr. Benton,
Yep.
Dr. Cammie Benton, who is creating the first integrative healthcare, hospital
in the country.
in the country. And so, and we're talking about emergency as well, everything.
Yeah.
So it's not just, this health and wellness place. And I think that if more people know and we can connect more and more people, then they know that they're not alone. There's a lot of them that's like, I wish there was some other option. Like, this is why we want to do this, because if people can hear this and know that there's doctors doing this, nurses doing this, natural integrated medicine, practitioners doing this, then they're like, okay, let me connect with them, because, there's strength in
Kristen
numbers.
is an amazing connector.
Oh, yeah.
Her gift is connecting. I'm serious. She's got a gift to connect people, and I think that's one thing that our podcast is doing outside of just helping people just think, is we're just connecting the right people. For example, just yesterday, we interviewed a constitutional,
Wednesday.
Wednesday,
Mm-hmm.
a lawyer,
Human
rights
rights.
and constitution lawyer. It was the most fascinating conversation, talking about everything we've been through over the past 2 or 3 years, but looking at it from violating the law on a human rights level and on a constitutional level. We're like, do you know anyone? Like, do you have anybody else you're working with? Because you can't be alone on this island. Like, you have too much. And, so now we're able to connect him with
Steve Kirsch, Dr.
and
McCullough.
Dr. McCullough, and like some of these people that we've been fortunate and grateful and blessed
To get
that
to
have
know.
come into our path. But that's like what's so great about it is that through our podcast, we're also able to connect the right people, like with Dr. Cammie Benton, who's creating this integrative hospital in Charlotte, North Carolina. She's looking for investors. She's looking for, doctors that are wanting to do something completely different. Because there's no way we can change
She's looking for
the
partners and
establishment.
stuff, too.
Yeah.
We need to
People
just
to
create
help.
the new. So we're able to connect people with her. North Carolina Physicians for Freedom, we've been able to connect people
Yes.
to
A
that.
lot of people
So
to that.
And then the
that's been
frontline
other-
healthcare workers,
Yes.
the fireman that we had on, was it Matt
Matt,
Huffman?
Yeah,
No,
Matt
that's
Hoffman.
me.
No,
Yes.
you're Matt Huffman.
Yeah. No, that's Matt.
Matt
it was
Connor.
Matt Connor
Both
from
of
New
y'all
York
are Matt.
City.
Both
But
of y'all are
same.
Matt, though.
Yes.
So that's why I was like,
But
okay.
he was fired and still does not have his job back.
Yeah.
And is still fighting
Even though
in New
they
York
say
City.
that they were rehiring, y'all
Yeah.
know that, right? That in New York, none of the employees
Have
even
been
though
rehired.
none of them have been rehired.
I didn't know that.
Yes, they were not rehired because they can keep running you through the legal system until you're exhausted. And the sad part of this, and this is what talking to the attorney really helped us understand, when you go into these class action type lawsuits, sometimes if it's, it's 20 million, that's not going to help all the people that were adversely affected. We do need, and that's well, my other point was to say we're going to change the legal system too by helping people get the right attorneys, people like Adam Siri who know the law. Aaron Siri, where they know the law and they are going in there and they're winning every single case.
He's the attorney for the Informed Consent Action Network, just in case
Yeah.
anybody doesn't know that.
Brilliant,
So good.
brilliant. He's the one that got the FOIA requests,
Yep.
so that Pfizer had to say, they wanted to wait 75 years. They had to say, here's the evidence that we've been lying to you the whole time. But just trying to connect the right people so that we can help people who've been adversely affected by these mandates, and we can help them get the justice that they deserve. Now, we're not attorneys, but we're connectors, and she's the master at it. But I know that the three of us together, we believe that even if everything gets way better, we know there's improvements to be had, and a lot of it is that people don't have the right information. So if we can bring them an alternative, here's what the mainstream media, medicine, legal, all this. This is what they say. But here's another alternative. Then we're going to keep doing that.
Yeah.
Until God tells us to stop.
Never.
Or they kill us. I don't know. No, it's never happening.
I have a feeling there's always going to be something to talk about.
We might need bodyguards. It's fine.
I share that feeling as well. We've talked about that with several of our guests that work in the political field as far as just on behalf of firemen. Cancer was a big thing for us, trying to get some legislation passed for cancer and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, well, we're checking these boxes. Well, what's next? And they just rattle off this laundry list of things. You're like, oh, okay. Yeah, well, we haven't even got started yet.
Yeah.
So it's it seems to be a bit overwhelming at times. Where can folks go to find y'all?
Well,
Everywhere.
everywhere. Kristen, you manage more of that than probably the two of us in terms of everything that we're keeping going.
Well, we're on Facebook and Instagram. Just
Yes.
think the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then in addition to that, we just started a Twitter account now that Twitter is a little
we're
more.
having fun with that.
Yeah, we're seeing how
Thank
far
you,
we can
Elon.
go. Yeah,
We're getting real
I don't have to
uncensored.
mark out the word back. See,
I know.
anything. It makes me so happy.
Yes.
We have a
But
Substack.
the best thing is Kristen's. We created a Substack, which Kristen is managing. It's amazing. So
We have a Rumble account too.
Yeah, Rumble.
If y'all want to see videos, it's not just us on the podcast. Like I will screen record. I have to get this stuff off my phone, but they delete stuff. So there's a lot of videos on there that have probably been censored
Yeah.
or whatever. So that's a great resource. But the Substack, I actually will write. We'll write some of our stuff, but I also add in other things to supplement what we've talked about, bringing in information that a lot of people won't see. And if anybody is unfamiliar with Substack, it's kind of like, I guess, like a blog or like a newsletter.
an online journal.
Yeah,
or,
like so if you can sign up for anybody's Substack, it's Just Think the Podcast Substack. If you go to substack.com and you can subscribe, it's free. It'll get delivered to your email. I know I get a crap load of emails, but you can then it's just there, and we don't overwhelm you or bombard you. I want to share something every single day, but I don't.
we held back.
But it's great. It's a great resource. So
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. We're trying to be as visible as possible and manage our time and it really is a lot of time, but try to make all this information accessible and shareable, right? Because the point is, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way, because we were talking before we got started about why you guys started a podcast, but it's more than just this conversation. It's the conversations you can facilitate that go beyond.
Exactly.
Right. And
yes.
and that's the goal. So if our chit-chatting, and I think maybe if we have anything that's a little unique for us is that a lot of people say it's like listening to three girlfriends sitting in their living room having a conversation. We want to keep that going because we want you to have these conversations in your living room too.
Right.
Please have them.
It's not scripted.
Yes,
Just
natural.
like y'all.
Natural. Yeah. And be polite, like I'm sure the three of us wouldn't agree on everything either, but you're having a polite conversation about how you see things. It's kind of at the beginning, you said it. We've got to go back to having that so that we can get the truth out there and we can make the right choices for ourselves, for sure. And think.
Use those skills.
Let's teach
Go
that again.
dust the cobwebs
It's
off.
a lost art, and I didn't realize. I didn't even realize it was. I mean, honestly, I never thought about am I critically thinking?
Yeah.
Until you have to actually start thinking, and then you're like,
And
wait a
then
minute.
Well, you go on TikTok and you watch these young kids and you're like, whew, we got some work to do. Like there's a lot of just a lack of the art and the skill of critical thinking is not something I don't know if you're necessarily just born knowing how to do it. You are supposed to learn it in school when you ask questions, right? And you debate and you challenge things. That's how you start learning that. Learn to play chess, for example. I remember in engineering school, they would say, learn how to play chess or learn how to think. It's strategy,
I think
strategy.
Debate should be built into school
Debates
curriculum.
should be, yes.
Truly,
Yes.
like I took a debate class or public speaking class in college.
Yes.
And I think we had I had to public speak and debate my point of view on something.
Yes.
But it makes you think about your how you feel about something, but also you have to think about how the other person
And
feels
why.
because you have to be able to.
You have to be prepared for
Right.
what
Yeah.
they're going to say.
And I mean that's super helpful.
Well, our kids at their school, they have to do a thesis senior year. So everything leads up to the thesis. From kindergarten on, they stand up to talk. If you stand up to talk to your teacher, you stand up at the desk and you talk to her. It's amazing. I love the school. And but they learn their whole lives to stand in front of their peers and defend what they believe. And by the time they get to senior year, they get to pick their own thesis and they have to write it and then defend it in front of their peers with teachers questioning them from the other side. And my son chose, was it the right thing to drop the bomb on Hiroshima?
Wait, was that Anderson?
That was Anderson's.
Okay.
And Bennett hasn't done his yet.
can't
We'll
wait
see.
for
I
that.
can't wait till Bennett does his Lort. But Anderson did that. And, it was great. He had teachers really challenge the morality of that. And I learned something. I didn't know the United States dropped papers down to the Japanese for days before saying, we are going to bomb you here. Get out of here.
Hello.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, wow. I didn't
Yes. So
either.
it's again. It's awesome. So learning to think, we got to bring that back to schools for sure,
Please.
and argue and debate.
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Thank
This
you.
is so fun.
Thank you for
Yes.
having.
So
Can we
much.
do it again? Because
Yes.
this was fun.
We need, yeah. Part 2 coming soon.
I mean, seriously, we'll come anytime.
But also, thank you guys
Yes,
for what
thank
you
you.
do,
Yes.
and
Oh my
not
gosh,
just
y'all are
what you
some
do here
heroes.
locally, but the fact that you are taking your conversations and making them available to so many. I was sharing with guys before we got started that my brother-in-law was a paramedic and needed these conversations. And I've seen firsthand the toll that being a first responder has on a human being. It's not a small thing. So in the same way we thank the military, we thank you guys for being the military here for us and every day helping us. We appreciate it so much. Truly.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes.
We appreciate your support for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got it.
We'll put all the links to y'all's stuff in the show description and all that good stuff. Drop it down there so people can find you.
Perfect.
Yay.
Folks, you want to
Thank
watch
you.
3 beautiful women run their mouth.
Run their mouths.
Yeah.
Good times.
Check that
We're good
description.
at that.
Now, it's been a real pleasure. We appreciate it. Thank y'all so much.
All right, guys.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. Do us a favor. Slide over to iTunes or Spotify or YouTube. Leave a 5-star review and leave a comment. If you want to support further, share it with somebody. Ask them to like, subscribe, and share it with their friends. If they can benefit from it, we need to spread it out. The more you like and comment, the more visible we are on all these platforms when people are just searching Firefighter Podcast. It'll come up Primary Complete a little bit quicker, and they won't have to dig quite so far to find us. We really appreciate that. Visit the website. It's a pretty good site. It's got all kinds of fun links and stuff. You can also find the shows there on the website as well, and that's www.primarycompletepodcast.com. Thank you all so much for your support. Again, we love you. Thank you for helping us make conversation great again.